60 Minutes with Angela starts right now.
Him a symbol of hope for credible elections here in Nigeria, and that's because he says, quote, "The job of an umpire is not for errand people," end of quote. He has been appointed by two presidents elected under two different political parties to serve as umpire in the following states: Anambra, Imo, Cross River, Rivers, Edo, and Akwa Ibom states. And everywhere he has served, the general verdict is that the outcome of the elections reflected the will of the people in those states. He's not known to bend the rules in favor of anyone, and that's why, as Nigerians gear up to elect a new president in 2023, Mike Igini, the resident electoral commissioner in Akwa Ibom State in the South-South geopolitical zone of Nigeria, joins me on the program today. Right, so INEC, Independent National Electoral Commission. It says independent, but is it in fact independent?
I can tell you here that under the leadership of two finest gentlemen, two professors, Professor Jega and Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, under whom I have served so far, the commission where I work today is independent, operationally, and also in funding. And so, I would say that the Independent National Electoral Commission,
yes,
where I work, in the last 9 years plus,
yes,
is an independent one, committed to the conduct of free, fair, credible, and more importantly, acceptable election, irrespective of the fact that at the end of every election, people would still like to go to tribunal. I'm sure that by now, people now know why people go to tribunal. There are several reasons why people go to tribunal. One, to delegitimize the outcome of the result, because people are not really ready to accept
defeat.
Two, it's also going to tribunal, as we have come to know, is also a way of trying to extract some kind of favor for the person that have been returned. But I must point this out.
Yes.
And that is that there are people who also go genuinely to the tribunal, because prior to 2011 down to 2019, up to the last recent subsequent elections, election prior to 2011, strictly speaking, were activities that have never met the expectation of Nigerian people. Most of the elections were rigged. We all recall that the 2007 election represent the lowest level of electoral discredit. Why? That was election that was conducted around April 14th. But strangely, most of the material for that election, ballot paper, were still outside the country. Yet, election was conducted.
And results
And a return was made.
declared.
Two, you also recall that was the same election when we were told that vehicle conveying ballot papers from Abuja to one state disappeared. And up to now, we have not seen what happened. And of course, more terrible, why I described the 2007 election as one that represents the lowest level of electoral discredit, was the fact that was one election where ballot papers were not serialized. So
when you say serialized,
ballot papers
yes,
were not serialized, they were not numbered. That is to say, how do you now account for the ballot paper? Because every ballot paper must be numbered. It must be serialized.
And a unique number.
Unique number, all right? But it was, return was made, and at the end of the day, they went to tribunal, and tragically, the Supreme Court of our country, just by sitting down, they affirmed the result that ought to have been annulled. But the point here is that since 2011,
yes,
to date, the election that we have conducted so far, the election conducted by the Independent National Electoral Commission, are clearly a departure from what used to happen before. And that is largely because it has acted truly to its name as an independent election management body.
All right, so we now know that the electoral process has improved tremendously from what you've said. The newly amended Electoral Act 2022, which I understand the old one is now repealed. That means when you say repeal, it doesn't exist anymore, right? So this new one has introduced so many innovations. Take us through the major innovations that will change electoral permutations as we know them in our process.
We need to underscore the fact that periodic, regular, free, fair, and credible election is what gives piquancy and spice to the practice of democracy.
Right.
That election are the principal instruments that make elected political office holder to pay attention to citizens. Because election constitute what we call vertical accountability. That is to say, it's only election that gives the opportunity for members of the society, political community, to demand accountability, the end that justify the exercise of power,
yes,
by those who have been elected into office in the previous election. Now, therefore, the sanctity of the law guiding election is very important. It is that gives the umpire what we call, enable it to provide what we call the sanctity of procedure. Before election, the laws must be known.
yes,
The rules must be known. The procedure to be adopted must be known. In order to deliver what we call in election management as substantive or sanctity of outcome that can only be determined after the people have voted, the vote counted, sorted, counted, and taken into account. It is against this background that the 2022 Electoral Act would have to be fully appreciated. This is so because a number of the innovations
Yes.
that INEC have developed since 2011 till date under the current leadership of Mamu Yakubu
Yes.
have now been secured by the 2022 Electoral Act. Now, you ask, what are those very
Innovation.
profound
Yes.
provisions that have secured our innovation? You will recall that one of the tragedy of the 2015 election, or the post-election adjudication in tribunal, was the fact that the car reader, even though section 160 of the Constitution has given unfettered power to the Commission
Yes.
when it says that of all the executive bodies created under section 153, that in the case of the Independent National Electoral Commission, it powers to make rules or otherwise regulate its own procedure shall not be subject to the control of any authority, including a sitting president of the Federal Republic, any sitting president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
And the use of the word shall means
Mandatory in this context. But what happened? At the tribunal, our colleagues, you are a lawyer,
yes.
they disappointed the country when they said the car reader was not supported by law, that was not in the Electoral Act. Something that had been secured when a constitution has given
Powers.
for a commission to determine its own procedure. What is procedure? The previous provision of the Repeal Act, section 49, subsection 1 and 2, were to the effect that on election day, whenever a voter approaches the presiding officer with his voter's card,
Yes.
where he or she register to vote, that the presiding officer would take the card from him or her, and upon satisfaction that the person before him or her is the rightful holder of that card, he will be given a ballot paper to vote. That was what the old section 49 subsection 1 and 2 simply said.
Yes.
Now, it was because of that provision, and given that position now connived with some presiding officers, people started buying cards. They were now warehousing cards. That was the phenomenon of people buying cards. Why are they buying cards? Because all you need to do
Is present the
is
card.
to present the card, and presiding officer just being satisfied that he is the person. So what happens is that Ojo will come with Tunde's card, Tunde will come with another person's card.
Yes.
Those who never registered before were now given cards to go and vote. Now, what we now did by introducing the card reader was that the card reader will now act as what we call an objective assessment, because a presiding officer being satisfied, we may not understand what may have satisfied him
Yes.
to say that somebody who is holding a PVC of another person, simply by saying that he's satisfied, what's the objective test to do that?
Yes.
We now introduce a corridor to ensure that the holder of that card must be the person. So when you put in the card, you put in your PVC.
Yes.
It will first confirm that it's an INEC PVC. Two, the picture of the
bearer.
person the bearer will show, and we now require that we need to authenticate your biometric. All right?
Yes.
Now, this was subverted.
How?
And when it was subverted, because the tribunal, in interpreting section 49, subsection 1 and 2, well, the view that the card reader is not recognized, that what the electoral has simply said was that just the president just satisfied.
And they were refusing to accept the card reader as
an instrument to cure that subjective provision.
Yes.
That upon satisfaction that the voter is the rightful owner of that card. But what INEC brought in to deal with that mischief was to ensure that we'd check your biometric. So tribunal up to Supreme Court, they said, carry that. Though it's a good innovation,
it's not known to the law.
Not known to the law. But what happened to provision of section 160? It's against this background that the new 2022 Electoral Act, section 47, have now come to rescue all INEC electronic devices, because accreditation now is now based on the use previously of corridor, but now of the beavers.
What is beavers?
The beaver is a biometric voters accreditation system. The beavers is an upgrade of the corridor, because in the case of the beavers, once you approach the presiding officer, once you give your names, you bring your permanent voter's card, it will be entered into the device. Your name, everything will show. But interestingly, it's going to record back even when you registered, because it is now both facial, not only biometric. We are now dealing with your facial recognition. So, assuming your fingers could not be authenticated, what about your face? That is the new technology we have introduced.
Okay, so now
those who have warehouse permanent voters card, you have just wasted resources of the country, because it costs this nation so much money to print those PVCs. All right? You have also denied people. In fact, the best that we should do now is to return those permanent voters cards to them. So, but the point is that section 47 of the 2022 Electoral Act has now allowed for the use of the beavers or any electronic device, put forward by INEC for the purpose of accreditation. Because election is a generic process that has the constitutive elements of first accreditation, because it's at that point that the principle of one person, one vote could be well established. And so with that, you could see all the elections we have had in recent time, despite the huge number of people you have on the register. Just look at the figures. The figures are now truly reflective of the actual voters' turnout. Beyond that is the provision of section 50, which of course gives operational independence, drawing from provision of section 160, which said the INEC of the Constitution, and I said, procedure for the election in the country shall be in accordance with the procedure determined by the Independent National Electoral Commission. In fact, that itself is not even new, because few hours to the 2015 election, President Jonathan also signed into law amendment to the Electoral Act that I believe 2010. All right?
Yes.
To the effect that procedure for election under the old Section 52 shall be determined by the Independent National Electoral Commission. Similarly, is the provision of Section 51 of the Electoral Act that has to do with what constitutes overvoting. Prior now, overvoting was based on total number of registered voters. But we have argued, we have put forward proposals as the umpire midwifing the democratic competition that understand the operation of what we do, that it is wrong to base in determining on issue of overvoting at a polling unit.
Yes.
That what we should be looking at should be the total number of PVC collected, but more importantly, the total number of accredited voters. Because the old argument, provision, was aiding rigging. But the current Section 51 has put a stop to that. And how?
What is hidden rigging?
Yes. For example, in a polling unit, where you have 100 registered voters, and on election day, only 45 turned out that were accredited.
Yes.
But because you have extra 60 on the register, what happened was that those who rig election,
yes,
they will now, because they write the result, they will turn in 41, 42, 40, even 50, 60, 70. Now, that is self. If the total number of accredited voters is 40,
yes,
there should be no reason why the total number of vote cast should exceed 40. Because the first step is accreditation.
yes,
Total number of accredited voters is 40. But total number of vote cast is now 60, 70. Now, that itself is an overvoting. But the law, the old law, was to the fact that overvoting should be based on total number that is based on 100, not on total number of 40. This is where politicians have exploited for so many years in rigging election. So they can bring in, turn in votes, write the result. So the tribunal say, look, yes, you are arguing
100 registered people.
They are still within the total number of registered voters. That is what has been going on. Regrettably, court of law aided this. Even when the umpire said that empirically, this is what it should
wrong, be. Yes.
Another leg of that was the fact that when we introduced permanent voters card, we now said, if election had been conducted and in a particular area,
yes,
there was violence, election could not be conducted. But in the return made in that particular area, you have about 50 registered voters. But as between the first and the second person, the margin of lead is just basically about 20. All right?
Yes.
Now, if it's 20, the margin of lead is just 20.
Yes.
But here we have 40 and 50 registered voters where elections have not taken place as related to simple majority election, that is State House of Assembly, House of Representatives, and senatorial election.
Yes.
Even with respect to even the executive, presidential or governorship election, as related to simple majority. Principle. Now, the argument had been that of INEC with the introduction of PVC was that if in that particular area, from our records, only 10 people only 5 people or 10 people collected permanent voters cards
in that violent
that violent area, only another. Mind you, the margin of lead was 20. All right?
Yes.
So, even if, based on that, if it's only 10 people that collect PVC, whether we should go and do election then before we can make a return should be based on the total number of people who collected permanent voters card
in that place.
and not the entire people who did not collect on the register.
Yes.
All right? Because if you don't have a permanent voters card, you cannot vote.
Yes.
In which case, there will be no need to go for that election. Because if you go to that election,
only 5 people.
Only 5 people that actually collected permanent voters card. So assuming you can even give all the vote to the other person who was behind.
There's still a deficit of
15. There will be no need. But what was the calculation based on? The argument was that no, you must go back. Because truly, if you go by that rule that they're talking about, it means that the election can actually change because just only 20. You see, you have about 30 there. So the person who is behind by 20, he could even score 25 or thereabout and also defeat the other guy. But realistically, given that only 5 people collected permanent voters card, is there a need to go to that election? No. All of that has been cured under the current Electoral Act. Also, is the fact that for political parties, Section 77 has now enjoined them to have a register of their members. Because if you want to do either direct, indirect, primaries, or even consensus, we should be able to have your register. And the law says that before you do your primaries or convention, 30 days to that time, submit to the Independent National Electoral Commission your register of your member. Because INEC as a body, at the moment we are now on the 4th quarter of CVR, 4th and final.
Yes.
By June, we will stop the process to prepare the nation register.
CVR meaning continuous voter registration
exercise, CVR. Now, we are going to give you register to political parties. How come that political parties, you don't have register of your members? Because the credibility of any election rests on the credibility of a voter register that must be in existence. Also, what we find very interesting is the provision for what you call electronic transmission of results. In fact, this is the most profound provision of the 2022 Act that we cannot but continue to commend all stakeholders that made it possible for us to have that section in the Electoral Act to secure the integrity of the votes of Nigerians cast at the polling unit.
All right, we'll talk about this electronic transmission of votes after the break. So join us again after the break. What is the effect of that electronic transmission now on the electoral process?
The most profound highlight of the collective effort of Nigerian people to secure the integrity of the electoral process is the coming into the act of provision of Section 50 of the 2022 Electoral Act that's now made it possible for the Commission to transmit results straight from the polling units by way of upload, actually, into the cloud.
Can't it be hacked?
It cannot be hacked. This is how it works. You know, in the common parlance, I hear people talk about transmission.
Yes.
In the idea that something will be transmitted from polling units to the work collation center,
Yes.
from the work collation center to the local government in that order. So the fear is that in between from polling unit, there will be fear that something could have happened. There could be hacking and all of that. No, absolutely no. What happened is that what we are doing at the moment is that at the polling unit, using the INEC, all right?
Yes.
The INEC result enrollment device is simply to upload the results. You are going to snap the results. It's immediately uploaded into the cloud. All right?
Yes.
So how are you going to hack it in the cloud? Now, the work collation officer who is waiting at the work collation center, he has been given access code to view the result already uploaded into the cloud. Without having interaction with the presiding officer.
In the polling unit.
In the polling unit. Now, the idea is that because we are doing a two-way system, there must be what we call paper trail. So the presiding officer, after announcing the result,
yes,
he will enter that into from EC 60E, which we normally call the people from EC 8A, similar to that. The same result from EC 8A is what is contained in the from 60E. It will be pasted at the polling unit. All right?
Yes.
Now, he will proceed or she will proceed to the work collation center. What has changed now with provision section 50, the what you call transmission, which of course what we are basically doing is to upload to the cloud, is that previously you all know that miracles normally happen. Magic will normally happen at the work collation center,
or at the local government.
At all levels. That is where politicians will visit the worst of violence to change the result, switch the result, and all of that. But with the innovation we have put in place,
that original
what will now
result
happen is that the original result, when the presiding officer is going to the work collation center, will betide him or her to come to the work collation officer with a result different from what he has seen uploaded in the cloud. So what are you going to... So there's nothing to hack in that process. Because in the same vein, the local government collation officer had also seen the result. In the same way that either the state constituency collation officer, returning officer, all of them would have seen it. Because in all the elections we have conducted, take Edo for instance, because the Edo election was an election that the whole country, just one off-season election that the whole country, outside the country, everybody was involved. We uploaded the viewing platform, the portal, to accommodate over 2 million people. So the people of Edo State in Japan, in Australia, they were seeing the result at the polling unit
in real time.
In real time. So today, as I sit down here, if I am to demonstrate that to you, if I open my system, I will show you the entire result of Ondo State, Anambra State, Edo State, all the various elections we have conducted in recent times of the elections. They are there. So when we hear people talk about hacking, what are you going to hack in the cloud? That is the greatest and the most profound provision. And of course, you all recall the furore,
Yes.
the back and forth that issue of e-transmission generated.
Yes.
But that is what it should be, because all these innovations the Commission has put in place is to give meaning and purpose to the ballot as the best means of expression of the will of the people in a democracy.
When INEC says today that Angela has won this election, you can stand on that in truth to say yes, indeed.
Absolutely. Because the polling unit, you can see now, if you watch the trends,
Yes.
people are now taking violence, no longer at the Work Collation Center, they are taking violence than politicians to the polling unit.
Yes.
Of course, they will have to meet the people there. Today, once a result is declared at the polling unit, that is it. Every other thing after polling unit is just mere aggregation of data,
Yes.
collation.
Yes.
And again, look at the provision section 120 of the Electoral Act. No option for violation of that provision if a presiding officer, a collation officer, a returning officer decides to alter in any manner an announced result contrary to what happened at the polling unit or as collated, on conviction, you go straight for 3 years jail term. You see, election will become a mere ritual if people vote do not count. If people vote do not count, we are going to lose what we call the law of anticipated reaction. We say that what a politician is afraid of is not the last election, but the next election.
The one in front.
Because if they know that they can rig the process, they will not have respect for the people. And respect for the people is the beginning of responsible leadership. And so, the innovations that are in place are the ones that will guarantee a credible process. And that's why we are calling on Nigerians that, irrespective of what you feel about the process in the past,
Yes.
a new system is in place. Come forward. Go, if you have attained the age of 18, you have not registered before,
Yes.
go now and register.
That point you make about not registered before, let's talk about that, because you know, for instance, if a person has changed address or their card is defaced or ruined in any way, that person shouldn't be registering afresh.
And no, not at all. If you have lost your PVC, you have registered before,
Yes.
but you have lost your card is defaced, you want to change, or before now you're not married, your status have changed,
Yes.
You have changed the place of domicile, you don't need to register again. All you need to do is to go to INEC offices. You know, we're now moving down to the registration area, the wards level now. Go to INEC offices across the country. In fact, we have just established what you call the help desk to Nigerian people. Go to anywhere. All you do, mention your name, that you are registered before, the area you register, they will go into the system, your name is there. If it's replacement of PVC, it will be done. You don't need to register again. And that is why it is very disappointing that despite, you know, a series of engagement with the public on this same issue, that these categories of people don't need to register, only those who have attained the age of 18 or those have attained the age of 18 but have not previously registered. These are the only two categories of persons that are called upon now to come and register. Every other person, you want to change your place of domicile, you lost your PVC, it is defaced, you had biometric problem, in the last exercise, your biometric could not be confirmed, and none of that, you don't need to register again. So, but what happened? Despite all of this, in the pre-online system, which is the first in Africa that we have introduced, that in the comfort of your home, You could do registration
Okay.
and all of that.
Yes.
Then before you come and do the in-person, because you do the pre-online, thereafter you come in person, just like you go to the embassy and all that.
Yes.
So that we can collect your biometric.
Okay, so
but what has happened now?
Yes.
Is that people are now doing multiple registration to the extent that well over 2 million plus that were registered, over 1 million were multiple registrants. These were the categories that have been declared as invalid because INEC have not have migrated to a higher system or from the automated finger identification system, AFIS, to now what we call the biometric voters identification system. The ABIS.
Yes.
That will now have now ABIS, automatic biometric identification system. This one is not only dealing with your trying to confirm those who are doing multiple registration, including your facial. That's why we are able to dictate over 70,000 plus in Anambra before that election. That's the reason why it was not possible. Regrettably, this multiple registration was across the Federal Republic of Nigeria. But at the moment, we have printed for those who started the process of registration since on the 28th of June 2021 till December last year, that constitutes the first and second quarter.
Yes.
We have produced well over 1.8 new permanent voters card now being taken to the various states for distribution to those who have to come forward to collect them.
Right.
But that of those who registered in January, February, March, and now we are now in the fourth quarter, which is the final quarter for before the election is going to end on the 30th of June. We are also going to produce that in due course, and also we made available to all the would-be holders before the 2023
Okay, so
election.
for those who have problems with that pre-registration thing online, is it possible for them to just not do it online and go straight to the INEC office and do everything
No,
there?
we don't. No, the problem is not with online. What we are saying is that people, both in person,
Yes.
people who are registered before,
Yes.
what they were doing was again registering again. This is largely because we have also found out that politicians are also encouraging them, believing that when they register, they are going to collect the permanent voters card from them. They are still in the past. Our politicians don't learn anything.
Yes.
In fact, how can you be in a particular vocation? You don't try to understand
The rules
the
of
rules,
the game.
development within that vocation, that profession. It's very sad because all the PVC that they have bought before, the warehouse, they are useless. You cannot use them anymore.
All right. Can INEC come to register me in my house or in my office? Is there any circumstance at all that will make INEC come and register me at home? I'm thinking of people like you're invalid, you've broken your leg, or something like that. Is it acceptable
at the
under
moment,
the
there's
law?
no room for that at the moment.
Okay.
Because what is normally done is that people who have physically challenged, they are given a kind of priority at any center of registration. So now, from these state headquarters, local government headquarters, we have now moving to the wards, and we are going to be rotating that across and all that. So that cannot be, but going to private home, no.
No. What about offices? I'm a big shot in my office,
No,
and I'm
there's
calling the INEC man
that's
to
not
come.
that. No, there's no room for that. There is no room for that. All Nigerians who want to register, who have any issue to sort out, you have to go to you can avail yourself the use of the online in the comfort of your home, your offices, and you're all right. But in person, if it requires, collecting your biometric, you have to go in person. After all, when people fill a immigration form or visa form, online,
At some point,
you have to go to the embassy so that they can have your biometric. That's basically what we're doing.
You've talked about all these changes now, and let's look at how we can punish offenders, electoral offenders. You've had calls in the past to speak about the need for the commission to reduce human interface. We're seeing all that now in this new Electoral Act. I mean, at one point we were appointing professors, thinking that a professor came with some level of integrity, but we also saw these professors circumventing the whole process. Under this new Electoral Act, circumvention can't happen again.
You see, no. You see, the law says don't do this. But there are people who are going to go contrary to the provision of the law.
Yes.
Because we know very well that pecuniary interests is, if not always, the reason why people deviate from ethical standards. It's so tragic in our country that people of presumed integrity, like the professor you mentioned, that today in our country, university lecturers, people in such a very decent environment where we should look up to, are now being used by politicians to rig elections, to utter figures. Don't forget that the job of collation officers drawn from the university community is basically to aggregate, to act together.
Nothing else.
Nothing else. Just aggregate, act together. But see what they are doing right now. Of course, we want that there will be consequences for any and all who deviated from ethical standards. And that's what happened in Akwa Ibom, that today a professor has been jailed for 3 years. Another professor is already being tried in the same
at the moment. What about the ad hoc staff? You know,
similarly, ad hoc staff, staff of INEC that have deviated from the standard expected of them. In Akwa Ibom, for instance, 3 have been dismissed. Look, to sustain, maintain the confidence of the public in the electoral process, those whose action undermine public confidence must be punished. That is the only way. Because the innovations we are talking about today are not self-executory. They are not self-implemented. They will not implement themselves.
We still need human beings.
It is the human agency that is very critical to that full implementation. Whether we succeed, as was in case in the past, or we succeed in the next election, will be determined by our collective values and principle. Because INEC is just one stakeholder in this process. INEC is not in control of all the factors of success. INEC for the procedure. Judiciary has a role to play. Security has a role to play. The political parties, the candidate, the citizens themselves, the media, you have a role to play. Your credo, the people's right to know. By way of empowerment, you have to do that. But we must say this here. The only concern that we have remains the human agency. The corruption, because the unhappy truth in our country today is that corruption has not been tamed at all. The political class, they are putting money together to want to buy presiding officers. They want to compromise the process. In fact, as we are innovating, they are also innovating in their own way, negative way, to undermine the process. In fact, some of the worrying tendencies that is threatening and putting our democracy at risk are perpetuated by the political elite. You will see from the start of the primaries, you are going to see how they are going to be in disarray. Where we have a country where our value pyramid is upside down, you know, dishonesty is now on top. And so, the innovations, as good as they are, we know that the devil is usually in the implementation.
Do you think we still need special electoral courts to deal with these electoral offenses, even though we're seeing convictions now through the normal courts?
What happened in Akwa Ibom is very exceptional, an exceptional case.
Yes.
And you could see the reluctance of the political class. Since 1999, they have been clamoring for the establishment of a special court, Electoral Offenses Commission.
Yes.
Is that happening now? Since 1999. How many years now? Over 22 years. We are still where we are. You can see the reluctance. Because the very people some of the people who perpetuate these electoral offenses, some of them are the ones we are now asking
to set up courts.
To set up a court. To do what? That's the challenge.
Join us again after the break. Welcome back. Let's talk about dangers to INEC personnel and targeted assaults against members of staff, and of course destruction of INEC property. Surely this must affect the projections of the Commission going forward towards a better election when your buildings, your properties are targeted. Members of your staff are also targeted, as we saw recently. I think it was in Imo State when INEC officials were actually killed right there in broad daylight in cold blood.
The spate of attacks on INEC properties across the states is very worrisome and disturbing indeed. In Akwa Ibom, for instance, before the 2019 election, INEC office at Ibesikpo that was newly renovated.
Yes.
The very huge sum of money was raised down.
Burnt.
Burnt. Brand new generators were burnt. Car readers were destroyed. In the same vein, on the eve of that election, 11 commercial vehicles, boxes that were hired to convey election materials and personnel were all burnt down on the eve of election. Up to today, nobody has been held accountable. In Anambra, in several states, this has been the situation. The height of it all was the killing last week of INEC staff on duty. And when I listened to the audio of one of the gunmen, he was shouting that, look, they are talking of a referendum. And INEC is talking about election. When I listened to that, I saw ignorance in display.
Yes.
Because we are talking about a referendum. In the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the only body statutorily empowered to conduct a referendum and election is INEC. And so, if you are saying that you want a referendum, and assuming that it's granted to you, who will conduct that
Who will
referendum?
you call?
Which body will conduct that referendum? You kill INEC staff, you destroyed the machine for registration. Because we are going to do, if you are going to conduct a referendum, it's not a referendum that a 2 years old, 3 years old, and other. Basically, it will be people from 18 years and above, those who have cards. You destroyed everything. So you can see ignorance on display.
Yes.
And so this is very sad. Now, our call here is for the security agencies to do their very best to create an ambience that will make it possible for us to have election in 2023. Because there are grave implications
Yes.
if we are unable to conduct the election in 2023.
Such as?
Such as the fact that the tenure of people who are currently in office will come to an end. So are we saying that the current setup should continue for those who are saying there should be no election? And that will lead to a constitutional crisis. So election we have to hold. All that you can do now, and what we are calling on people is that, look, those who have said there should be no election, you hold your view, you have a very strong view and all that. But why don't you use the opportunity to now identify people, those who are aspiring now,
Yes.
on the issues, who can represent you on those issues? Vote for those people.
The issues
so that those things that you are talking about now,
yes,
they vote for people that you know can take on board those particular issues. And that is why the message for 2023 is very key. And on this, the commission, every one of us, we are fortified by the provision of Part 1, Section 2 of the Electoral Act 2022, and even the previous one,
yes,
that enjoins INEC not only to provide civic and voters education, but also that we must educate Nigerians on democracy and sound knowledge of democratic practice.
Thank you very much for speaking with me today, Mike Igini, the resident electoral commissioner of Akwa Ibom State here in Nigeria. And thank you for watching. I'm Angela Ajetunmobi.